probably the only laugh that man will ever get in his life is by stripping off and showing his shortcomings.
Picture the scene. You're on your way to a business meeting on a different planet. I know that's not really something that's particularly easy to picture because interstellar travel hasn't been invented yet, but go with me on this. You're on your way to that meeting when you're set upon by muggers who steal all your precious documents and, for some reason, all of your clothes as well. You can't go back home because you're currently naked and also you're massively overweight, but for some reason your metabolism is through the roof, and if you don't have a good hearty meal on a fairly regular basis, you'll die. Sound like something that's happened to you? Well, probably not, but it is the premise for a budget game from Mastertronic released in 1987. And don't pat yourself on the back for knowing that this particular game is called Streaker, because 1, it's in the title of the video, and 2, it takes up about 25% of the screen at any given time. I'm not sure what the thought process is when games do this. Presumably it's just because they couldn't think of anything else to put on the screen, but we get it. We know what the game is called. The name of the game is bigger than your energy, hunger and sleep meter, plus your inventory system, which can carry up to 5 items at a time combined. That's not necessary, Jeff Calder, creator of Streaker. That's not necessary at all. Now, if the name Jeff Calder is familiar to you, then that's because he was the author of Streaker. That seems to be his one and only output. Or is it? Because this is where things get a bit confusing. On the Spectrum Computing website, Jeff Calder is listed as one of the creators. That's Jeff spelt Geoff. Geoff, if you've only ever seen the name in print and never pronounced it properly. However, move slightly further down the page and we have author Jeff Calder, spelt with a J. Is this the same person, or is it merely coincidence that 2 people called Jeff Calder were involved, albeit spelt differently? Are they brothers with unimaginative parents? I can only hope so. If this is indeed the same Jeff, then he apparently also had a hand in Horse Racing Simulator, Sport of Kings, Wizard Simulator, Striker in the Crypts of Trogan, and Monochrome Simulator, Switchblade. The latter 2 titles came out pretty late in the Spectrum's life, wandering onto the scene in the early 90s when all the kids had started listening to gangster rap and dreaming of a 16-bit future. But if this is the same Jeff we've all now come to know and love, well, Streaker could very well be his first game on the ZX Spectrum. It could be his first game in its entirety, in fact, which might go some way to explaining why up is down and down is up. I'm not being facetious, that is quite literally what is happening in this menu that you constantly have to navigate. Here, look, I want to get this item here. What button do I press? Well, you've probably guessed it correctly now because I've already given you the answer, but just act surprised when I tell you, you're right, it's up or down. Honestly, I can't remember which button it was I had to press, and that happens constantly. This is an insane thing to go on about, but my brain is so hardwired to pressing up or down to mean up or down. When a game throws me a curveball like this, I apparently can't cope with it. And that would be fine, but practically everything you do in Streaker involves a menu. What a weird oversight. Has Jeff never contemplated the concept of vertical movement prior to making this game? Up is up, Jeff. Get a grip, man. Anyway, outside awkward menu scrolling, Streaker is fairly standard in its controls. Left, right and jump. Jumping is used pretty much exclusively to get up very big stairs and to jump the gap at the top of the very big stairs. You don't jump over enemies, you don't jump on enemies, and in fact, this is very much not a platform game in the slightest, contrary to what it looks like. The objective of Streaker is to wander a huge array of screens which supposedly represent a shopping area, even though, I've got to be honest, before I read the synopsis, I was pretty sure I was wandering about in a castle. Cast that idea aside, you're apparently in some massive vertical shopping mall. This being a shopping centre, not all of the shops are open for various reasons. Perhaps it's simply not opening hours, in which case you'll need to wait around or use the stopwatch item to fast forward to opening time. The other reason could be because you're a naked, obese man. Shops really don't like that. Walk into Tesco with your dick flapping in the wind and a big smile on your face and see how far that gets you. So that leads you to part of what is your ultimate quest, the quest for fashion. Or just clothes. Or actually anything you can wrap around your cock and balls. A towel will suffice in a pinch. The problem here is that this apparent medieval futuristic space shopping mall is absolutely littered with shit. And apparently you've only got space enough to carry 5 things in your... Wait, now, hold up, this raises a question. How in the name of Keith Chegwin are you able to carry all of this shit without pockets? So you've got 2 hands. I suppose you could hide something on the underside of his stomach? Clenched between the arse cheeks, maybe? Whatever he's doing, I don't like it. And getting some clothes on him doesn't actually increase the amount of stuff he can carry. So it's fair to say that he's either got hands the size of dinner plates, or you don't want to be touching any of this stuff after he's had his grubby buttocks smothered all over it. Let's discuss items though, because whoever is in charge of looking after the shopping centre is doing an absolute disservice to custodians the world over. This place looks like my 9-year-old's bedroom after like 5 minutes, but what I mean to say is the place is littered with items, overwhelmingly so, and you can pick up pretty much everything you come across. So let's combine all of these things together, shall we? You have a big map to wander, you have hundreds of items that you need to pick up, use, and examine, you have space for a small number of items, and you have an awkward menu system that doesn't know which way the world works. What else can we throw in here just to round things off? Sluggish pace? Yeah, that ought to do it. Streaker is, by all definitions, slow. That's something you're just going to have to adjust to. Walking from one end of the shopping centre to the other can probably take a solid couple of minutes, so if you've left behind an item that you really need, well, bobbins to you, get walking. That can and will drain the energy right out of some people's enjoyment gland. Couple this with the random thieves that pop up, which you can't really do anything about other than go a different way or wait. There are steps to alleviating this travelling within the items themselves. You can come across various coloured teleport pads. Basically, you've got a teleporter base and a teleporter key. Put the base somewhere, then carry the key around with you, and as soon as you use that key, you'll rematerialise where you left the base. That's cool, I like that. What's less cool is that carrying this key around with you permanently takes up one of your inventory slots. You'll probably also want to carry the stopwatch around with you because it's a useful necessity to have it with you a lot of the time, and that's at least 2 slots taken up with items that you can't really drop. There are numerous coloured teleporter bases and keys, but the limited space means you won't particularly get to use them to their full extent. You can try setting up an array of various pads and keys so they loop back around to each other, but if you start going that deep into the transportation system of a $1.99 budget title from the 1980s, I can guarantee there's better game options for you out there. So we're in a situation now where I've done what appears to be a lot of complaining, and that typically happens when a game is either absolute shite, because that's what you do when a game is shite, you complain, or on the flip side, it's because I really like the concept of a game, but I'm a little flattened by the execution. And that's kind of what happened with Streaker. There are a lot of similarities here to games like Megabucks, which I've reviewed, and the Wally games, one of which I've reviewed. And much like those games, I've had similar issues. Megabucks I liked, Everyone's a Wally I did not like. And I think the connecting point into all of these games is pacing. The puzzle-solving elements are fine enough in Streaker, items roughly make sense, and the general progression of opening up new areas is a good way to keep pushing the player forward into new expanses, opening up their options further and further. But just getting there can feel unbearably slow, and having your towel nicked by a thief who appears off-screen with no warning and being booted out of an establishment is, at best, shit. This is just an aside, however, the main issue generally stems from just how cryptic the game is, in line with the hints provided on the inside of the game's sleeve. Most of these are fine, apart from 2. You will need to eat to keep your energy up as you go in search of your clothes, so if you spot any food, eat it. You may have noticed during most of the footage I've shown here that there are 3 energy bars, and the one that does most of the moving is the bar shown simply as energy. The hint provided in the manual specifically says that in order to keep your energy up, you need to eat food, but that's not actually correct. In order to stop yourself getting hungry, you need to eat food, but that doesn't affect your energy at all. So how do you deal with that? Well, I had no idea. No idea at all. So I had to go and watch a walkthrough to see just how this aspect of the game actually worked, and Well, it's no wonder I didn't work it out. In order to recharge your energy, you need to use one of the teleport keypads that has not been assigned to a teleportation base. The beam transfer will be purged into your body and refills your energy. This feels less like a puzzle and more an incomprehensible nuisance. The hunger and sleep meters are fine, I sort of get the reasoning behind those, but the energy meter is just dumb. The other hint that doesn't really help all that much, but that's also due to the game's lack of readability in general, a happy clothes thief is better than an unhappy one. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Well, I worked it out, but because the game gave me no indication that I'd done anything correctly, I had to go and watch another playthrough in order to work out what it was actually doing. So, these thieves that I mentioned earlier, bump into one and they'll steal your clothes and or energy, but there is a way to stop them from doing this by giving them things that they want. When a thief is on screen, you can choose to examine them, giving you a cryptic clue as to which items will satiate their appetite for stealing your trousers. This is fine, and I actually quite like the brain scratching required to guess which items will work for each of the nuisances you come across. However, it seems that the thieves need 2 items before they'll stop hounding you, and it's never actually explained that this is the case. There's also no hint, no sound cue, no graphical change, nothing to tell you if the items you've given them are correct. You just have to hold your breath and walk through them and hope to God you got it right. This ultimately led me to watching a full walkthrough of Streaker because it had me locked in the mindset that if I couldn't even work out these 2 basics, I probably wouldn't be able to work out the rest of it. And I was pretty much correct in that assumption. RZX Archive have a good run through of the entire game, totaling 40 minutes, and that's a playthrough where someone knows what they're actually doing. In my 5 or 6 hours of playing, I'd still barely gotten anywhere with the game. So, on that balancing scale between Megabucks, a game I liked, and Everyone's a Wally, a game I didn't like, where does Streaker sit? Somewhere in the middle, that's where. Right on the fence. With a bit of basic knowledge that really should have been made a bit more obvious, Streaker is a fairly ambitious and wholly commendable title for a budget release, and while it's a game I struggle to find any enjoyment in due to the frustrations listed above, for its age, it's by no means a bad game at all. There's a great amount of detail in the world, a comedic premise, characterful design, and interesting concepts. For anyone with a penchant for puzzle solving, Streaker would have been, and probably still is, a fairly good choice for Spectrum enthusiasts. It also has an absolutely superb intro soundtrack. Okay, no, sorry, I was thinking of literally anything else. Anyway, Streaker, it's not for me, but then neither is being a naturist. That's not to say naturism is bad, and it's not to say that Streaker is bad. It's simply to say that some people like to have their cocks out at all time, and some people like to play puzzle games with lots and lots of walking. This was a great analogy to finish on. Well done, mate.
I found it difficult to get a handle on what creates a naturist. Yes, you get a refreshing breeze in unfamiliar parts.